Yeah, here's this thing without context. Don't ask me about it. Hey everybody, it's been about a month since the last podcast, so I figure it's time to put out another one. Had the pleasure of sitting down with good friend and Wizards of the Coast employee Gavin Verhey. He does a way better job of introducing himself than I possibly could, so I'll let the man handle that.
My name is Gavin Verhey. I was an ex-pro-esque player, and now I work at Wizards of the Coast inside the Hollowed Halls making Magic the Gathering, and I am a game and experience designer. But I do work on both design and development, as well as some stuff like brand and event planning. So I kind of touch like every area inside of Wizards, all the way from like writing an article every week for thedailymtg.com to straight up designing sets and experiences. So it's a lot of fun to work here.
It was a lot of fun to record. We reminisced about the old days a bit, talked about some design, his interesting career path, and then he tells an epic travel story as he is wont to do. So I hope you enjoy this half as much as I enjoyed recording it with him, and I will see you on the other side for some pretty cool announcements about content I'm working on. We have probably the most history of anybody that I've had on here. Back in the day, in like the JSS circuit mostly, you created and ran a team. I ran in a slightly different circle with a then very young Owen Turdenwald, who felt the need to create a rivalry. So what was Team Unknown Stars, and how did that come about, first of all?
Yeah, basically. So first, imagine a time way different than today. Imagine no Twitter, no Facebook, nothing like that. So it's a little different time. It's kind of scary, but just imagine it. And you want to communicate with other Magic players. Now it's so easy, right? You just go on Reddit or Facebook or whatever, and you message your friends. But back then we used archaic technology called message boards. And so, I had heard about all these teams that pros had, and I was like, okay, look, if Antoine Ruel can have a team and win this Pro Tour, I can have a team and do well in the Pro Tour. So I basically scoured all my friends and the internet for people who were like good at Magic or upcoming at Magic, or people I thought had some potential, and created this team with the most unfortunate name of all time called the Team Unknown Stars. And despite the horrible name, a lot of really good players actually came out of it.
I was going to say, at the time, it was a name that was very easy to mock or whatever, but Calcano and like Arilax, who else was on there?
So Calcano, Arilax, Mata Zadelkai,
yeah.
Of course. You had Matt Nass, you had Kyle Bogomies, just like all, I could go on for a while, but just like all these players who at their time were like really good and have gone up to like be really good players in circuit. I think at the end Jacob Wilson was even on there. Wow. Just like a lot of people who are now really well-known players. And basically what we did is just like post decks back and forth and brew stuff. And Ari had a lot of connections at RAW, of course, the store in Michigan.
Right.
He worked with Chapin and those guys. So he would come up with a lot of really cool ideas and would bounce stuff off here. And a lot of great decks came out through there. The makeshift mannequin deck, if you remember that from like
absolutely
era.
Evoke makeshift mannequin?
Yeah, Evoke makeshift mannequin, the powerhouse.
Value!
Yeah, we played, that deck did really well that weekend at States, like I don't know, the top, we had like 7 or 8 top 8s between all of us at States.
Yeah.
In retrospect, that deck is like hilarious. It's blue-black control deck after Warwind comes out that features 0 cryptic commands. But then, like, the next weekend, Ruel makes top 8 of Worlds with it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, that was one big thing we did. Just like, we all qualified for Pro Tours. We were finding fairies together, all this kind of stuff. And then eventually, as like Facebook and Twitter became more of a real thing, it kind of died out.
Well, also everybody kind of like did their own thing, like. Because back then, I don't want to speak for your team, but most of that was like sort of JSS and, it was a bunch of really young guys, relatively speaking. So then as like the JSS dissolved and like some people started making it on the Pro Tour, other people like moved away from the game, like that. That's what happened to our team at least.
Yeah, what kind of happened is really it kind of split, right? Like there's some people who are just like, okay, I'm done with Magic, I need to focus on other things. I'm gonna step away from it for a while. And then the committed people, the people, the Arilaxes of the world or whatever, would continue playing it. And because social media was so much easier, we didn't have to use this forum anymore. So, you kind of naturally lost touch with the people who weren't as into it and just kept talking to people who wanted to keep playing. And, at that point, we had all played together for so long that when we flew out to events, we just talk to each other and hang out and all that stuff,
Yeah.
So
I guess I haven't introduced our quote team, which was Team Known Stars. Just a direct dagger for no reason, which is especially funny because none of us were stars at all whatsoever. I guess like Gadiel might have technically been on that team, but besides him, like Novikov had a PT top 8, and the rest of us were just stupid kids that.
In retrospect, I'd love to have a 3v3 team draft of like Team Known Stars versus Team Unknown Stars now and see who
Oh
would win.
yeah,
Right?
oh yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. Be like me, Ari, and I don't know, Calcano versus like you, Owen Turtenwald, and yeah, Jeff Novikov or something like that. It's like, actually, like it's a reasonable team, right?
Yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun. Before we played, actually, I think, was the World's Story.
Right, yeah, the World Story. That was really the first time I got to interact with you like super far. Like, I mean, I knew he was like this guy who randomly daggered me on the internet for no reason. And so, of course, the only natural thing I could do was offer you the most hospitality possible.
Oh, yeah, just be the nicest human. So, do you want me to tell this story? Or would you...
why don't you at least set up of how you got into the predicament you were in?
Oh, yes, okay. So, I'll give the short version of the backstory. I had made the Pro Tour, like GP Top 8, and then got 19th at my first Pro Tour, so I was like starting to snowball into level 4, but I was 1 point short of qualifying for Worlds, which was, of course, the last Pro Tour at the time. So I went chasing after that pro point at the last GP possible, which was in Auckland, New Zealand, which is quite a flight. So I went there and I did get my point, and I was really excited, and I was going to come back to Memphis and or come back home and then go to Memphis the next weekend for Worlds. And then I lost my passport in New Zealand, which meant that I had to stay there for 3 more days, change my flight directly from there to Memphis. So I showed up at the airport at like midnight or a little past with no place to stay, no deck list or cards. Just completely stranded and screwed, and Worlds started in 10 hours. And then I run into a Gavin Verhey in the airport.
And when I meet AJ, he has his notebook out, he's like scribbling in it, and I'm like, oh, AJ, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm writing my article for next week. He was writing in his notebook, right? Like not a laptop notebook, like a literal notebook, right? Yeah. And it's been so much that's where he's been writing. So me and actually my mom are traveling to Memphis together because I won at this like gold qualifier tournament they were running this year, where you could like compete to play for, I don't know, like a bunch of gold or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was very, very attractive.
It was the promo they ran after Sam Black won a car.
Right.
Was they gave out a bunch of gold, I guess.
And so we run to AJ in this airport, and like I know who he is from both daggering me, but also like he's written all these great articles online. And so, Magic is a family, right? Like we're all family members together, and no matter what you know about somebody, you're always going to try and help someone out if you can.
Absolutely.
And my mom, of course, is like the nicest.
Just the actual best.
So like, we bring AJ back to our hotel room. She pays for the cab ride. We let him stay with us. My mom like argues with the hotel to get a cot for our room for AJ to sleep on for the night.
I'm so thankful to have a roof over my head where I'm just like gonna curl up in the corner, and she like fought to get me a rollaway bed, and like you were exhausted and you're like trying to go to sleep, and she like made you build a deck for me out of your collection.
It was great. It was a really good time. And then you went and played Worlds. But even at AJ, you probably don't know this, but to this day my mom still asks me how you're doing. She has
so
super true. She has like this absurdly keen memory for all the people she's ever met playing Magic. Or from me playing Magic,
right?
And she'll like constantly ask how Ari's doing and whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, like Ari.
What a sweetheart.
And once she literally slept on the floor when I was hosting Magic players for a GP, so that other people could sleep in her bed.
Jesus,
totally bananas. But yeah, she's super nice, super great, and of course it kind of rolled down. So yeah, I'm gonna help out a Magic player in need.
Right.
So yeah, I remember that was our first big interaction. Then we like interacted a bunch of times after that too. Like after that, we knew who each other were. We'd talk at events.
Right.
And something I really appreciate about AJ is some people are like really soft to your face or whatever. Where AJ is like a great realist, right? Like you will just tell me like, no, this is how you can improve. Really, like listen to me. Here's my good advice for you. And your advice is usually really good, right? And it's like a lot of people will kind of hold back, and you're like, no, look, I'll be real with you, and here's what you need to do to get to the next level of what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that there's definitely a lot of perception that still lingers to this day of my sort of arrogant youth, but I was just very confident, and I wanted to be surrounded by the best players I could, and I wanted because that's how you improve, right? Like it was a very selfish thing. Like I wanted absolutely everybody I knew to be the best that they could be, so that I could improve off of them, which is something that I picked up off of Owen. I mean, I just like I wouldn't even talk. I would just like soak up whatever he was doing because it was clear that he was just by far the best in our area. So for a lot of people, I came off very brash and aggressive, but really it was just I very strongly believed in what I believed in. So I'm glad that that didn't turn you off like it did for a couple people.
Well, I think like your intent was always really good, right? And that's what I appreciated.
Yeah.
Even if, yeah, maybe some people saw that as abrasive, but to me it was like, okay, he's just trying to help. Like I can appreciate
Right.
it.
Right.
And
And
if you look past that, like you give me great advice on my writing, you give me great advice on playing. You were like, hey, if you want to try and get into Wizards, here's some advice for you. So just listen to what you said. I thought was really valuable.
right, I will come back to that, but before that, I want to tell one more story of your amazing mother. Some GP, Seattle, Tacoma, whatever.
Yeah, GPCL Tacoma. Yeah.
I actually stayed at your house with Ari and one other person.
Maybe Ari and could have been Ben Swartz or
Yeah, it might have been Ben, who is
or
in
no.
Vegas, and I'm gonna see him in a couple days. We like just play tested until like 1 in the morning, fell asleep, and woke up to your mom having already cooked giant plates of bacon for us, just ready to go, and made sure we all had water and everything, and then drove us to where we needed to go.
Living in the Verhey household certainly has its perks.
Yeah, no kidding. And apple does not fall far from the tree. If I do
Well,
say so
I'll have you know
myself.
though, I never had bacon made for me, so it was only like when Magic players were around. So it was like a very special time. You guys, I remember once the GP before that, it was like a GP Vancouver. We were hosting like Ari Lax and DJ Kastner and Kyle Bogamies, as
Uh-huh.
well as like Zach Hall and Ben Lundquist. This was when I was like 15 years
I
old
was
or
gonna say
something. I
that's
just
a nice
invited all these
crew.
people to my house, and my mom, like DJ Kastner, was like very particular about what he could eat. He was on like this like kind of diet, and my mom literally like drove all the way across town to like buy the meat that he wanted to eat for dinner so she could come back and prepare it. Just like all this great stuff. I'll never forget the time that I went to like Pro Tour Hollywood, and I walked
Uh-huh.
into this hotel room of like Owen Turtenwald, who was also staying with us at that event, like a bunch of other people, and they're like, "Oh, like how's your next level mom doing?" And it was like very, very caring. So yeah, and it worked out great, and I'm glad to just have like brought so many Magic players into my life through hospitality,
Oh,
and I hope
absolutely. And that's
the
clearly followed you because it seems like every other week I see on Facebook you posting a story of you just being taken in by random Magic players in Europe and playtesting all night on a train.
yeah, that happens sometimes.
It's
Your life is as crazy as you make it. I feel right. It's like if you want to live this lifestyle, maybe it'll come back to you someday.
for
There it
sure, and it is pretty awesome. I have to say I like those stories a lot more than the stories where you fall into volcanoes.
is. Yeah.
This match was very funny to me because it was pretty late in day one. We're playing to be like 7-1 or 6-2, something like that. And we were having a sort of back and forth game, and then you slammed a Baneslayer Angel and seemed very confident. And I promptly Doombladed it, untapped, and Rise from the Grave it. And then I was very confident. But you did not falter, for you had your own Doomblade. But there is one small clause in that text, and I remember giving you the and I killed you with your own Baneslayer.
Yes. And that was I remember that. That was GP Portland.
Portland, okay.
There we go. Yeah, because that was core set sealed. I remember that. Yeah, my in that Grand Prix was totally wild. I opened this really weird pool with two Baneslayer Angels. So
Wow.
my deck was actually just like blue white. I will kill you with Baneslayer Angel eventually. And
Sure.
so
It's just like a couple counters and divinations, and you're just like, eventually we'll draw one of these Baneslayers.
Right, my deck had 2 Baneslayer Angels, a clone, and then like a bunch of bounce
Oh,
spells.
three Baneslayers.
It's like a bounce spell in case they tried to kill my Baneslayer, and like three. I played like 3 counter spells or something crazy like
Yeah,
that. It was
yeah.
like it was basically like a wannabe standard control deck, right?
Well,
And
good thing you didn't draw that bounce spell, cause I did not have another answer to the Baneslayer.
yeah,
You said very nice words about me, but I want to prove that it is mutual. You were not really doing anything content-wise besides like Facebook and maybe like blog posts or something at this point. And I think you were trying to get into writing. And at the time, I was at tcgplayer.com or maybe even Brainburst at the time. This is a while ago. And I got an offer for a regular column on Star City Games, but I would have been taking a pay cut, and I was happy at TCG Player or whatever. So I said no, thank you. But I know a kid who you might want to look into, and you ended up taking that position, and wrote there for like 4 years.
yeah, like 3.5 years. Yeah.
A really long time, and I don't think I missed one. I have a lot of respect for your work, and then since it's a Star City column, it's more like strategy and competitive. But you had a lot to say about design and development, and I know this because we had many conversations. You, me, and Sam Black was also another participant in those conversations.
Yeah.
And Ben Hayes as well, who also ended up at R&D. And yeah, we would have really deep and good conversations about game design and magic design. And that was sort of like, it was very clear to me that you belonged at Star City when I suggested you for that position. And then from those conversations, it was very clear to me that you belonged to WotC. And when you made it clear that you wanted to do that with, I think it was like great design research kind of sparked it. And you're like, yeah, I think I want to, this is my path that I want to go down. I said, well, the way to do it is to prove that you know what you know and are as good at this as I know you are. And the way that you did that was creating a design blog, which you updated very regularly for how long? Like not even a year before you got noticed for it.
Like I post every now and then for a year. It still exists, by the way. If you search designspaceblog.com, I think you can still find it, which has not been updated in a very long time.
But it's timeless stuff, right? It's not like, hey, this is the new cutting edge standard deck from 5 years ago. It's like, this is how a magic card is made, or this is what this top down design is, or whatever the subject is. And the only other person that's really doing that stuff is Mero. Well, at least at the time. Now there's more and more content on the mothership about it. But yeah, and then sure enough, you got picked up for the internship, and it went through, and you've been at Wizards for how long now? A couple years?
Yeah, almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in October. So
God,
that's crazy. It's hard for me to imagine.
We are so old.
It feels like I just, stopped playing in big tournaments, right? But no, it's almost 4 years ago. And of course, between the design blog and getting hired, there's also all the overextended stuff too, which kind of was one of my big parlays.
Oh, I had forgotten about that. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, so the really short version is basically, this was before Modern existed. And basically I had kind of identified that, hey, there was this big hole between Standard and Legacy, and Extended wasn't really doing the job that Wizards wanted, right? Like, your cards were rotating too often, and no one was interested in getting involved in the format.
The only people that liked Extended were like the PTQ Sharks that had a huge edge.
Right, and like when people were playing Extended, often people did like it, but the problem was, since your cards rotated out, there wasn't a lot of reason to play the format outside of when it was extended season.
Exactly. You only played it for PTQs, basically.
Right. So I designed a format called Overextended, which was basically just Modern, except instead of Mirrodin being the cutoff, Invasion was the cutoff. And then on my own, I made a website and ran tournaments on Magic Online, and even had to stay around the world, ran tournaments in stores. And this was kind of going on at the same time that Wizards was starting up their approach to Modern. And eventually, because like my events were so popular and Modern was kind of on the horizon for Wizards, they changed the Pro Tour in Philadelphia to be the first Modern Pro Tour and had it be a real format. And now, as we all know, Modern is very popular. So that was kind of a big thing for me because I showed that
it's kind of a big thing that you invented Modern. Yeah, I agree.
I can't take full credit for inventing modern. I know now, especially the Wizards was doing a lot of its own research at the
Yeah,
same time.
parallel, but
Parallel design.
publicly, like you were the one that was like, hey, there's this hole that needs to be filled before anyone really even recognized it as an issue or as not even an issue that like needs solving, but a place where improvements could be made, right? Like it wasn't Magic wouldn't be dead if it weren't for Modern, but a lot of people get to play with cards that they wouldn't have otherwise, and a lot of people have a new favorite format that otherwise wouldn't exist.
Right, the format's pretty wild too, right? There are decks that exist in modern that can exist in legacy, and certainly would never exist in extended. But you can do
For
something.
sure. Well,
And I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out overall.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned Pro Tour Philadelphia. That was one of the first Pro Tours that I was not qualified for, but I lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the time, so I still attended. And I actually helped develop the Blazing Shoal deck for that tournament. And then that deck got immediately banned. So that's always a good feeling that to take part in the development of a deck that was way too good.
Pro Tour Philadelphia is probably my favorite Pro Tour of all time, or at least one of my favorites, just because it's a brand new format. It was announced, like 6 weeks or whatever before the Pro Tour happened, and nobody knew like what the format was going to look like. Right? It could be literally anything. So people were testing every crazy deck you can imagine. And now when you look at modern, like there's a lot of variety, but you kind of know what the top decks are.
Right.
Imagine just like no one knows, right? It's like, yeah, okay, we know that Splitter Twin exists or whatever, but like, is that any good? Has anyone ever played it? No. There are no tournaments for it. Nothing.
It's an experience that has basically never been replicated. Like since the diversion between like Type 1 and Type 2, like that's never happened before in Magic history, where they're just like, all right, deck builders, go.
Right. Right. Even with like block or extended, you at least had places to work off of. So it was really fun to watch, and seeing things like Cloud Post, Emrakul in the top 8, or the Blazing Shoal deck.
And the other thing that made it cool was normally if that were to happen again, or when it did happen, the starting point, right, is the standard decks that were the most powerful when they were in standard, with their other cards. But all of those decks were banned to start. They're like, no, you don't get the jump start. Like, but you can't just be like, oh yeah, obviously you just play fairies with these other cards now. It's like, no, you actually have to build crazy new decks with these like interblock synergies.
Right, and no matter how you feel about the modern ban list, I definitely felt like at the beginning, having some of those cards that were so prominent on there, like the Bitter Blossoms, the Stoneforge Mystics, the Jace the Mind Sculptors, so that people had to innovate was really fascinating, right? You can't just like, okay, look, I'm going to test for a week, and I don't know when I'm going to play. Let's play Fairies because I know it'll be fine. No, you can't really do that here, right? Like, if you wanted to play Jund, I guess you could, but you might just get crushed by people.
It seems to me like a lot of critics of the modern banned list don't fully understand its purpose in terms of creating a healthy and fun format. A lot of stuff that I see is, oh, why is an X card unbanned, or why is X card banned? And that's not quite the right question to be asking, in my opinion. And maybe you can confirm or deny this, but a lot of those cards, it's like, could it be unbanned and be safe? Probably. But to what end? Right? Like, if it's unbanned and not good enough, then what was the point? And if it's unbanned and it's too good, then it's a crappy format for a while, and then we have to ban it again. It's just like pure downside with very, very little upside for a lot of those unbannings, and a lot of the sort of like, did Treasure Cruise need to be banned? Probably. Just do it. Just get rid of it. Like, there's still tens of thousands of cards that we have access to. Just because one is gone doesn't mean the format is healthy versus not, were it the other way around.
Yeah, I think a really good example of this in a card that we did unban, but that kind of paints a good picture, is Golgari Grave Troll.
Yes.
Right? This is a card where, like, okay, it's banned, and which means nobody can play with it. But if we unban it and it's too good, it's a big problem, right? If the dredge deck is too strong, it's super frustrating. Now we talked about it for a while, and we went back and forth on Grave Troll, and eventually decided, okay, if we unban Grave Troll, it might actually create some cool decks that use the graveyard that aren't too strong. And with Delve around the same time,
which it did too.
Right, and Delve has its own can of worms that goes along with it.
Yeah,
but
we don't have to talk about that if you.
But unbanning Troll could do some interesting things. So we decided to go with it, And I could see other unbans like that happen in the future. But in general, making sure that the format is fun to play is important, and not just like, oh, you can play with all these cards is one thing. Make sure the format is actually fun to play with is another entirely. And we try and make sure that the ban list is used to not only make sure the format is healthy, but also that it's really fun to play.
It seems like the rule of thumb of Modern is a turn 4 format has been stuck to fairly well and has served quite well. And only recently has that started to be pushed. I mean, Twin is like obviously very good and resilient, but it is a turn 4 deck. Only recently have we seen the Amulet Blooms and Gristle Hordes kind of pushing that. And the ban list went up a few days ago as of recording, and there were no changes, which I'm not too surprised about, but I'm also like pretty sure there's some watch list stuff going on. But again, it's all about upside and downside, right? Like it just so happened that we hit that middle ground, like gray area with Golgari Grave Troll. But as you said, it's a good illustrative example of a point where if this card is good, the format is likely to be unhealthy. And because I remember, I mean, we were like PTQ grinders when that deck came out, and I remember it being like the original dredge deck, the like Feldman dredge deck, was like nothing anybody had ever seen. It was not Magic like we had grown to know it, and until people had 6 pieces of hate in their sideboards, it dominated. And to risk going back to that, even for a short time, is a real threat. But obviously you guys nailed it, as always, because it's awesome that there are actual decks that use it, but not unbeatable nonsense, which has a lot to do with things like Therapy and Dread Return not being legal.
Yeah, Dread Return not being legal is a big one. I mean, if you think about it, really, I mean, this is kind of a little tangential, but I think it's kind of unfortunate that like all those graveyard cards that were a core part of this dredge deck came out at more or less the same time. Like Dread Return, Narcomoeba, and Bridge from Below were all in the same block. And I think it would have been like actually pretty interesting to see the deck evolve over time to see like, oh, now it has Bridge. What does it do now? Now it has Dread Return. What does it do now? Because originally you had the Frigorite style dredge deck that was like, okay, remember that was going to like get back Icarids and attack you with Psychotog and like remove cards to kill you or whatever, right?
Right.
And then the double whammy of Bridge and Narcomoeba in the same set is like, okay, there's only one really way to build this deck anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, all happening at the same time created one monster. It could have been interesting in retrospect. Maybe there is an okay version of the dredge deck. Isn't this crazy kill you on turn 3 monstrosity?
Yeah.
But anyway, as far as Modern goes, like, we want to make sure that things are kept in check. At the same time, though, if we never take any risks, we're probably doing our job wrong, because Magic has to be exciting and fresh, and it's important that the players feel like I figured something out that Wizards didn't think about, right? And so unbanning a card like that every now and then, you might see us do that. Well, Grave Troll went over well. I could see us doing it again with something else in the future.
For sure. Just you talking about the development of the dredge deck, of it coming all out at once. If it came out piece by piece, I wonder how long it would have taken people to figure it out.
Right. It's like, oh, instead of like, it's all here in one set, build your deck. Like, okay, no, guys, I tried the Narcomoeba version. That just didn't work. We should stop right here, Yeah, Modern is really its own format. I'm happy with how that turned out, right? It's not standard. It's not legacy. It's something wholly itself. You can play some standard cards in it.
It's overextended. Sure.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, with your fairly unique career path towards R&D, because from the outside, it seems like half of R&D are sort of casual or like fantasy, like D&D type gamers, and the other half are like Hall of Fame caliber ex-pro players, and that's sort of the melding of what became R&D. And you were very much like semi-pro, like like PTQ grinder guy who was clearly good but never really like broke through. But you were definitely not like the EDH player of the time, right?
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, with your somewhat unique path, what advice do you have for aspiring game designers or just aspiring Magic designers?
Well, I guess as far as the Magic designer front goes, the key, there's kind of one big key, And that is often we go to you when we want to hire you, as opposed to you coming to us. Because everyone wants to work on Magic design, right? Like everyone's like,
It's
hey,
the
I want to help
dream.
make Magic cards.
Yeah.
So the best way for us to come to you is we have to know who you are first. And we want to know that you're a smart, intelligent person that's good at playing Magic and good at talking about Magic, which is why actually, if you look at our trend of hiring recently, we've gone to a lot of writers or people who have talked a lot about Magic, like Ben Hayes, someone you brought up earlier, is
Yeah.
someone who placed well, like did well as a Pro Tours, also wrote some articles, right? Or as a kind of an example, someone we brought on, Sam Stoddard came in after me, same kind of deal. He wrote articles and did some Star City Games live broadcasting, and then okay, we know that he's a smart person who can talk about the game. We've seen his insights. Let's bring him in.
Yeah.
Something we're
Prozac as well, very similar.
Right, Adam Prozac, same kind of path, and Ian Duke, an absolutely fantastic addition to the team. Even though he didn't write as much, still showed that he was really good at talking about the game, and because he's a Duke. Of course he's good at
he's a Duke. Of course he's extremely attractive and good at everything he does.
Right. I think you'll see in Ian Duke's commentary, he's fantastic at relaying.
Oh, yeah.
So, really, a big thing is we want to see how you can think about the game, because when you're inside Wizards, there's enough people that I'm sure we'll get to the right answer eventually for the most part.
Right.
But being able to state your opinion and talk about it and be able to argue and debate with people in a reasonable manner is a super important thing to be able to do. And seeing that in your writing is a great way to see, okay, you would fit in well in this environment. We know that we can have you in a conversation.
Right. You can debate intelligently and logically, or play devil's advocate and like engage in that push and pull that gets you to where you need to be.
And then you can see things from multiple sides. I think a lot of, I don't want to say flaw, but something that many Magic players don't always understand is that there are many lenses you have to see things through, right?
Yes.
Like you're a super competitive Magic player and you only ever play PTQs, and you look at a set and you're like, oh man, there are all these cards I'll never play with. Well, maybe this guy will never play with them, but maybe the commander player will love a lot of the stuff we put out with here, right?
Yeah.
So the psychographics, all the player types is really important.
Absolutely. That has got to be one of, if not the most common shortcoming of people that would otherwise be good designers, is that they are only capable or only able to, design for themselves, basically.
And the good news is Wizards wants to hire a lot of different people, right? We have all kinds of different personalities in R&D. You have people who are super competitive, like you said, or there's people like, Ken Nagel, who play a lot of Commander, right? Or Ethan Fleischer and Sean Mann, who came through the Great Designer Search, who play more casual Magic. And even people who love certain formats. Brian Hawley, who we hired a little while back, is a big Legacy player. So, he can look at it from the Standard perspective, but also be talking about, hey, this card might be too strong in Legacy, or let's make sure to put Legacy in here. So all these different vantage points help make the game so great.
So did you pull him in because of Delve?
Ryan actually helped playtest Delve. Although I think it's to his credit, when he was playtesting Standard, he was mostly playing Sultai decks, so makes a lot of sense.
Well, I've heard it that it's like Delve was priced for Standard, and you nailed it for that.
Yeah, so with Delve, we definitely priced it primarily for Standard and Limited. I think Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time, those can be fine in Standard, right?
Yeah.
In Modern, we knew that they would be good. Obviously, we knew that Treasure Cruise would be a card that we talked about playing. I don't think we realized to the extent, of course, of which it would be strong.
Right.
But,
or even that Angler would see high-level competitive play. That was not on my radar when I was looking at the spoiler,
Right. So I'm pretty happy with where it ended up. If we could do it all over again, would we have made some tweaks? Yeah, maybe we would have made some tweaks. But really, for Standard, I think the cards are in a really good spot. And I'd rather, at the end of the day, Standard and Limited are played so much that I want to make sure that those are good. And if we have to ban a card in Modern or Legacy every now and then, we do. And it's okay.
Yeah, with the Modern ban list as it is, as we've discussed, it's not the worst to add another card to that list. It's not like you're breaking the ice with it,
Right. It's you know what? Yes, there's I don't know what the number is, 30 some cards on the ban list, maybe 20 to 30 cards on the ban list. There's still thousands of Magic cards you can play.
Exactly.
So you should
be okay. So you mentioned Sam Stodd and also Prozac, and I think Ben did quite a bit as well of booth work. You yourself did quite a bit of booth work. It was mostly for Star City for their independent circuit, right? I don't think you did a lot of the GG's Live stuff, did you?
Yeah, mostly. So early on, when Star City Games was starting to host their Open Series, I was pegged as one of the initial commentators for that. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh, what do you mean? the kind of work that Cedric and Patrick Sullivan do on the Open Series now. Earlier in the series, there were a lot more commentators. I was one of the initial commentators that was pegged, so I flew around and did commentary on their tournaments. Yeah, and you were at many of those events.
I was, and then when you left to do your own thing, I started doing booth work. So we actually shared a booth a couple times once I busted out from events, and that was always fun. But so I wanted to ask you, with your history in the booth and with for Pro Tour coverage, then bringing in more and more R&D people, do you have any interest in getting back in front of the camera?
Oh, absolutely. I love talking, obviously, as evidenced by the fact I'm doing this interview right now. I enjoy
Yeah.
talking on camera. I enjoy public speaking, all that kind of stuff. I would be more than happy to do Pro Tour coverage or Grand Prix coverage if the situation arose. But at the same time, there's people who are chosen for specific jobs to do Pro Tour and Grand Prix coverage, and there's a very tight-knit group of people who do that. Plus, I'm really busy with my own work, right? It's not really fair to be like, hey, I'm going to take time off of making upcoming Magic sets to go in front and do the Pro Tour coverage. Right. So Ian's kind of covering that role right now, and I think Ian brings a great voice to the game of both being really well spoken and having that development background to talk about the choices that we made. And before him, Zach was doing a very similar role, right? Zach Hill. So at some point in the future, I could totally see myself doing it. And if Greg Collins, who manages coverage, ever asked me to, I would do it in a heartbeat. And I think I've even done it in a few places at like GP Vegas, the first GP Vegas. I did commentary in the booth then. So at some point in the future, I could totally see myself doing it if I was asked. But, I have kind of an awesome time sitting and making Magic cards too, so I can't complain at all.
Oh, your life sounds so hard.
Literally before this meeting, or before this interview, I was in a meeting working on Magic cards, and after this meeting, I have the grand misfortune of having to go to a playtest for a future set. So it is a hard life inside the walls of Blizzard. Someone's got to do it, man.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, because you have... There's another weird aspect of your job that has cropped up recently, which is you are like, I don't know the official title, but I suppose a consulting producer of the Geek and Sundry show Spellslingers, starring Day 9 and his nerd friends playing Magic. Seeing his show being very like casual and noob friendly is really, really awesome, because there's definitely a hole in Magic content for people getting into the game, especially as the game explodes, right? There's so many more new players. If all of the content is high-level competitive stuff, then they don't really have anything. So I think Spellslingers was amazing, and I wanted to ask you both what you do and how you came to be in that position.
Yeah, so Spellslingers is in season 3 right now, and like you said, it's kind of it fills this important niche of being something that both a new player can get into and is really approachable, right? It makes Magic just fun to watch, but also like there's enough good banter and interesting things that happen that like a player of any caliber can watch and be entertained. Yeah. And Geek and Sundry does a phenomenal job with that on their shows, right? Tabletop, which is one of their flagship shows, same kind of deal.
I watch all of it. I love Geek and Sundry, and I love what they do. So when I heard that they were getting a Magic show, I was excited, and then I heard it was Day 9 doing it, and then I saw that you were on like helping produce it, and it was just all my dreams.
So yeah, 3 years ago when we started up the first season, basically I was asked to be the Arnie representative. So as in helping to build the decks to make sure that it worked out okay, and also to be down there on site in case any rules issues come up or anything like that, or if someone has a question at any point. And also, when we're doing the way the show is created, of course, we ask people questions, right, to off-camera questions. They can then be cut in as kind of, in between.
Yeah, talking head interviews. Yeah.
Right, and so also to make sure, okay, these are the key points in the game. Here's what we should ask about. You can kind of build the narrative of Magic. And it really felt, actually, when I was doing this for the first time, what I realized is it was like my entire Magic history coming together to do one thing, right? Like I knew what the cards were because of design and development. I had experience talking on camera. I knew how to build a narrative because of my writing and also because of my broadcasting. So, and I was even a Magic judge. I was a level 2 Magic judge. Most people don't know this. So, like, I
did not know that.
I knew all these different aspects of the game. I knew what would be fun to put on camera, and it made a great fit down there. And so, yeah, I've had the pleasure of doing it 3 times now, of literally flying to a castle in Hollywood. I'm not joking. It's a literal castle we go into and film this. And Sean Ply is an awesome guy. He's smart and funny, and the number of things that get cut out because we can't air them that he says are phenomenal. So being down there on set as we produce this is a true, true pleasure. And also just getting to meet the wonderful cast of both the show and the hardworking people at Geek and Sundry is great. Like Felicia's awesome, of course, a true pleasure to work with. And in the past, we've had some really great guests who have been on the show. And this year, there's a few that haven't been announced yet, but are pretty big deals that I think you will want to tune in and watch for. There's one in particular I'm thinking of that I'm amazed we got him, and it's really cool to have him on the show.
Ooh, I like that. Well, I have seen, I think the first two are up as of recording. It was Allison Hayslip and Chris Cluey, which is already great. And if you go back to the first two seasons, they have some really, really awesome guests.
The really cool thing, by the way, about Chris Cluey's game, which went up this week, is they're playing some standard decks. And normally, we kind of go for more intro level decks in these formats. But Chris Cluey versus Day 9, they're playing two actually pretty reasonable standard decks. There's like an Abzan deck with like Siege Rhinos and stuff.
Yeah.
And a blue-black Demonic Pact deck, which is super fun. Demonic Pact is one of my favorite cards in Magic.
Nice.
Okay, so here, I guess I'll tell you what. I'll tell you guys a story that I haven't actually told anywhere online yet. This is an AJ exclusive right here.
Yes.
It actually happened to me last December, but I meant to write it up and I just never did. And then I fell off a volcano and I had to write that story. And precedence. And I've just been so busy and I write so much already. Like between writing my article and writing stuff for work, I probably churn out like 10,000 plus words a week.
Yeah.
And I just have like so much to do that, plus like with my Tumblr and Twitter and like Facebook, I'm like always doing this stuff. So I wanted to wait till the time is right. So I'll tell the story now vocally, and at some point in the future I'll write it up. Okay. So the first thing you have to understand is, have you ever been to Venice? Have you ever been to Venice, AJ?
I have not.
Okay, so Venice, Italy, gorgeous town, of course.
I've been to Rome, but not Venice.
Yeah, all these like little boats and stuff. You've seen in movies, probably.
Yes, I've been to the Venetian in Las Vegas.
I closed it up.
It's the same thing, right?
Also, if you go to Tokyo Disney Sea, you'll also see fake Venice. All kinds of options. But no, so the thing, though, about Venice, most people think of exactly that, right? The Venetian experience with all the boats. But in reality, there's actually kind of two parts to Venice. There's the part we all imagine, and there's also like the land part, where it's like, okay, you go there, and that's where people live before they go in and do their jobs in actual Venice. I had to catch a train from normal Venice to land Venice, and then from there I'm going to Vienna to meet up with my brother, okay? Should be pretty simple. And so I've basically been in Venice all day. It's totally awesome. Ate a lot of gelato, got really, really fat. It was perfect. And then at like 1 a.m, I take the train from normal Venice to land Venice, okay? And I get into the land area of Venice, and now I just have to buy my ticket to Vienna. And like the machine wouldn't let me do it for some reason before, so I'm like there trying to get there. And it's 1 a.m., and it's like super cold. I looked up later, and it was -1 degree Celsius. It was not warm, okay? And so I'm like slowly freezing, and I'm like on this machine, like trying to buy my ticket to get to Vienna, and like I can't read Italian, but like this big red X shows up on the screen every time I try and buy it. I'm like,
that's a pretty universal sign for you messed up somewhere.
Right, something's gone horribly wrong here.
Yeah.
So I'm in this train station and no one else is around. It's 1 a.m. Like there's no security person to talk to. I can't figure anything out. So I wander around and try and find out what to do. And eventually, like I find a telephone. I'm like, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll call my mom back home, who already determined is like super reliable. And I'll be like, all right, mom, I'll walk you through the steps of buying a ticket for this train station online. But like the problem is, I can't figure out how to use it properly. And whenever I pick up the dial tone, it like speaks to me in Italian. But like I think it's like saying like, you're making a wrong call, and eventually, like, I just shake the machine, and what pops out is an Italian lira, which hasn't been in circulation for like 10 years. So like, no one has used this machine in a really long time, and it's not going to be helpful at all. So I'm like slowly dying, wandering around the station, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to die here. This is the end.
Yeah, this is the end.
And so like I walk nearby to like the one hotel I can find, and I try and enter, and the guy's like, "Are you staying here?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Get out." So it's like, no one helping me at all. Eventually, I find a police officer, and I like explain my situation to him. And he's like, "All right, look, here's the deal. When the train comes, you're supposed to get onto Vienna. Just tell the guy you want on, and you'll pay there." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, I'll do this." So I'm like sitting there once again, slowly dying. My fingers are just totally numb at this point. And the train pulls up, and I get to the conductor, and I'm like, "Okay, conductor, you gotta let me on this train, or I'm just gonna freeze to death, and you're not gonna die out here." Right? He's like, "Sorry, like the train's totally full. I can't let you on." I'm like, "No, like you don't understand. Like I have to get on this train.
You are sentencing me to death.
I'm literally going to die if I stay here in this Venetian train station." He's like, "All right, here's the deal. You pay me money, and I'll let you on this train, but you won't have anywhere to sit. You'll just be on this train. I'm like, well, okay, that's got to be better than like.
Better than nothing, yeah.
So I get on this train, and true to his word, it's entirely full. The previous train was like canceled or something, and there was nowhere to sit at all. So I'm like in the hallway of this Harry Potter-esque train, and like luggage is slamming into me. And I'm like sitting there, like everyone's luggage is out here, so I'm just like getting battered back and forth. I'm like slowly like I cozy up to like my suitcase, and I start to fall asleep. And I'm like, okay, the train ride's only 12 hours. I can survive this. So the first hour is like okay, and after the first hour, the train conductor comes up to me, and he's like checking everyone's tickets, right? And he like goes through all the cabins, checks their tickets or whatever, and eventually gets to me, and he's like, "Oh, hello, sir." I'm like, "Hi, how's it going?" He's like, well, I got some bad news. You can't be in the hallway." And I'm like, "What? Wait, let me get this straight. So I can't be in the hallway." And he's like,
"But there's no seats."
I'm like, "Can I go and have a seat?" He's like, "No, absolutely not." So I'm like, "Let me get this straight. I can't be in the hallway, and I can't sit down. So what am I supposed to do?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry, I've got this figured out." So he leads me to the back of the train. And he's like, "Oh, you can just go in here," and he gestures to the bathroom. And so like he's like, "You can just hang out in this bathroom. So I take all my luggage and myself, and I sit in the bathroom on this stall. There's no running water, by the way, so the toilet is not working. It's just incredibly sticky and horrible in there." And of course, like
he basically just says like this porta potty is your new home for the next 10 hours or whatever.
Right. And so here's the thing.
Wow.
And people on this train, some of them speak English, some of them don't. So I'll just be sitting on this bathroom, and someone will like open the door. They're like, "Oh, sir, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, like it's fine."
Yeah, I have to step out so that you can do.
So you can use the bathroom. The best part was like, some people would kind of get down and be like, "Oh, I'll go use a different bathroom later." But I had some repeat customers who were like, "You know what? I like the bathroom that has the guy in it. Let's use it once, and come back later and like use the same bathroom again." So.
He's keeping it warm.
Right.
If that was in the States, you'd be getting tips.
And I'll reiterate, there's no running water on this train. It's like flushing the toilet. It's getting incredibly just like worse and worse over and over. Actually, like my phone is slowly dying, so I can't like use it to play any games. But I did like take a few selfies of me like hanging out in this bathroom just in case I ever wrote about this. So like just for a literal 10 hours in this like little compartment. Actually, eventually like 8 hours into it, someone finally gets off the train. We get to a stop, and I like take their seat. Okay, but like basically 8 hours, I'm like in this bathroom stall that people are using, and I just like go in and out. It's like, yep, you gotta use the bathroom. Going in and out. And it was probably the worst travel experience I've ever had. But what really sold it for me is after like 11 hours, I'm finally off this train, and I get out and I smell horrible, and I want nothing more than to go like check into my hotel and meet my brother. Okay,
right.
And I get off the train, and I'm walking out of the stall, or walking out of like the train area and out, and waiting for a taxi. And some guy taps me on the shoulder and is like, "Are you the guy from the bathroom? I love you. You're awesome."
Oh, I'm a huge fan of your work.
But you did a great job being in that bathroom for so many hours. Or what? But I was just like, the taxi could not get there soon enough.
Oh my God. Gavin, thank you so much for coming on here. This was a blast catching up.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really, really good time. And I missed, being able to do as many interviews like this or being on podcasts and stuff. So it was a really great time, AJ. I appreciate you reaching out and contacting me. And it's cool to just talk with an old friend like this, right? It's amazing. We have this internet, and we were once on opposite teams, right? Team Known Stars, Team Unknown Stars. Yeah. Now we're together, united on the same show. So it feels like everything's come full circle, and I'm super happy to be here today talking with you guys. If you ever want to ask me about anything, of course, to the viewers out there, you can always find me on Facebook or Twitter. It's just my name, first name, last name. Or on Tumblr at gavinverhey.tumblr.com. And you can ask me whatever questions you want, read my articles, whatever. And I'd be more than happy to respond to you. I always like to be active with my fans. So.
Hey everybody, post-production AJ here with a couple quick announcements. The biggest of which is that AJTV is back via Patreon. So you can go over to that Patreon page, which will be up the day after this is launched, and directly support the show so that I can make AJTVs. Also, the series that I made called Modern Maniacs, where I play a bunch of modern brews online. The show got picked up by a website after episode 1 and then dropped by that very website before episode 2. Thanks to some miscommunications and whatnot. So I'm still looking for a home for that, but in the meantime, I still stream twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, and I'm making a bunch of other content too. So make sure you follow on Twitter. You can also follow here on YouTube. thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Do you remember any other time we played? Because I'm sure we've played multiple times, but that's the only time I remember.
I remember playtesting with you many times.
Yes, same.
But in an actual tournament setting, did we play at Nationals once?
Yeah, maybe.
I think we played at Nationals once, yeah.
Must not have been a very memorable match, but...
I mean, if I wanted to, I could go to planeswalkerpoints.com. Ding!
Ooh, look at that professional plug.
And check out my entire match history and see who I played.
That is true. If I was a professional podcaster that was good at what he did, I would have already done that. But I just really want the part where I beat you with your own Baneslayer in. So
yeah. Well, you know what? I beat a lot of people Baneslayer until that day, so it's probably only fair I got to taste
a little taste of your own medicine.